welcome to Live Life Driven. Thanks for tuning in. Hey, I got to apologize to my regular listeners. I have not put a show out for a couple weeks. The last one was with Leslie, and thank you so much for your comments on Leslie's show. She's such a wonderful person, and she's got a beautiful book out right now. Please click on our link with her, and you can find her website and her book and learn a little bit more about her. If you were listening tonight, you have noticed in the title it said school board. And, you know, as the way this show goes, I talk a lot about being driven in life and the things that you're doing to achieve and accomplish more for yourself in business and personal. And I thought that I would utilize today's show for two purposes. One, you can get the value out of it right away and disconnect and turn the show off. And two, you can listen to what I'm doing. So if you're in the first category, you know, I'm living in Montana. We've talked about that on previous shows. I made a choice several years ago to move up here, and I've created a life for myself. And it's out of me being driven to follow my values and my goals and accomplish both. And that's what brought me to Montana. And part of being driven, I constantly reevaluate my goals and my values. And my values are God, family, health, giving back, having more time, and then finally and last, business, making money. And within those values, I find that family is just so important. And I've got two young children, 5 and 7, that are both of school age right now. And in Montana, we are back in school, and we've been in school, although there's some minor restrictions. And in part of that, I've learned that the best education for our children is when the parents are involved. And my wife has been involved with substitute teaching at our local school where one of my daughters goes, and it's been so rewarding for her. And I'm constantly thinking about how I can be more involved in their education. Well, I received the school newsletter last month, and it said that there is 2 trustee positions available for next year, which are basically school board positions. And after consulting some of my friends like John Fuller, our state legislator, and some of our local constituents, I decided that I would run for school board. So again, if you're in that first group, here I am practicing what I preach, being driven and going after and taking a step in a direction of following my values, which is family. Now, if you're in the second group, the balance of this show will pertain exactly to you. And what that is when you run for school board, there's a lot of questions about why you run and what does it mean to be on a school board and everything in between. And what I thought I would do is use my platform to talk about my school board run and answer some questions that are commonly asked for school board candidates. And that would give you a better sense of who I am and how I might react to things that come up on the board and how I might bring value or not. So what I'm going to attempt to do here is answer some common questions. I'll read the question and then I'll give my live answer. And if you had a chance to meet me locally in town up here in Flathead County, then you might have been a part of the meet and greet, or you might be one of the people I knocked on your door and told you I was running for school board. And this will give you a better chance to get to know me. If you're listening as a regular Live Life Driven listener, maybe you'll learn something as well. Maybe you'll be inspired to make a difference in your own community. Or maybe you can also learn what to expect from your own local school board members and what they're doing in your own community. So this could be a nice tool for you to raise your awareness, get more involved, and understand how the school board affects you in many ways. And it doesn't necessarily have to mean that your kids have to go to school there or they have to be in school still. Maybe they're grown up adults. You still pay taxes, and the school board still makes decisions that ultimately will affect your taxes. So without dragging it out any further, let me answer some questions that might be typically asked of a candidate for school board. So first and foremost, why do you want to be on the school board? Well, in my opinion, parents that are involved in their children's education, the children have more of an opportunity to be successful. And I want to give my kids every chance of being successful in their experience at school and getting their education. So my wife, again, she does some substitute teaching over there. We work on the homework at home with them. My wife does more so than I. And if I'm on the board, I feel like I'm going to be more involved in what's being decided for her education, or both of their educations, for the next 8 years. So I'm excited about that opportunity. That's why I would be running for school board. Now, do board members have a role in the day-to-day operation of the district? Interesting question, but no. It is the role of the board to establish, define, and create policy, visions, expectations, and goals. It's actually the superintendent's job to execute and hire the team to get that job done. But however, everything has to be approved and ratified by the board, and the board sets the outcomes that it expects to be accomplished. And then it's the superintendent's job to deliver that. And oftentimes, those expectations will come from the community if your board is doing their job. And what's been interesting to me is that I've been knocking on a lot of doors the last couple of weeks, and I've learned a lot about parents and families' opinions about how the board should be run, how the school should be ran, what they've been happy with, what they haven't been happy with. And a lot of these families don't even have kids in the school district anymore. They've grown up and moved on, but these people have lasting memories of the school and the district and how it was ran. So, next question. How would you handle requests or complaints by an individual or special interest group? Now, this is interesting because the board is accountable to the public, the voters, but the board has the duty to listen to its constituents. If an individual or special interest group wants to be heard by a board member, then the board should listen, but they should only listen. Then that board member can take the issue to the full board for a discussion and potentially an action, right? One individual board member has absolutely no power or authority. The board has to act as a body, and I think people confuse that. You corner a board member, you think, oh, he's going to make a difference, right? Well, really, the board has to act as a body. Only when a majority of the board agree is there power and authority. And, my experience when I look at board votes, I don't want to see 4-0s on votes or 10-0s, 10. I want to see a little bit of difference of opinion. I want to know that it's a well-rounded board and people have their own individual thought. Now, if an individual or special interest group wants to be heard by the whole board, then they should probably just attend a public board meeting and make public comments. Many times, though, the best course of action is to refer this individual or the special interest group to the superintendent. They might have better answers to the questions, and they can address the concerns because they're the ones that are acting, again, as I defined earlier, on the visions and values, right? Okay, so another common question is, what qualities or attributes, behaviors should a board member exhibit, right? In my opinion, it's honesty and integrity in all aspects of that role. They should also be a good listener, have an opinion based on fact and research, right? They need to listen to what the community's saying and then learn about the facts and research to help make better decisions. A board member should do a good job researching and finding the resolve to add value to the overall board, right? Not just be a yes person because everybody's going along with one person. A board member should be willing to work as a team to solve problems and enhance the school district, right? That's why we have a board. We've got a really small board that I'm running for. There's only 5 members. I've seen some boards as big as 10 members or more with the swing vote. I mean, just imagine all the personalities you could bring to that, all the qualities and attributes you could bring to that board and how strong it can be. So I think boards should really strive to have a mix of personalities and backgrounds and strengths so that you're adding a complete value for that school district, right? So this would be a really specific question, with the local school facilities running into some inadequacies. What do you see as a realistic short-term and long-term solution? Well, it's a tough question unless I'm actually on the board because I would need to learn more about inadequacies and make my own determination. And I think that's what the board's job is to do, right? Do some research, get involved, and find out, ask the right questions. It's common in business when it comes to growth and success that it can be resolved in a number of ways. Oftentimes different types of businesses are growing beyond their 4 walls, but you might look for some short-term thinking. Maybe it's in-kind donations, ways to make improvements with local support and help. But really for school boards, when you look long-term, it might come down to bonds on bigger issues. Like for our, in our example, we're looking at expanding our school where we might have to pull a big bond. So inadequacies are tough. But, that's business in life. People grow. Your business should grow if it's successful, and you deal with the same things in schools. Another great question here. Who should set the rules governing board procedures, methods, and behavior, and who should enforce them? Now, oddly enough, the board should set the rules and procedures while keeping each other accountable for those rules that they established, right? That's what a board does. They create the rules, and then they have to hold each other accountable for those rules. And the rules should be consistent with the values of the community, right? And that's why it's important that the community elect board members based on their values and what's important to them. If you're a community member, you should definitely want to talk to your board members so that you know what's going on and you can convey to them what's important. But ultimately, it's the public's job to vote for these members, and if they're unhappy, get them out of there. You know, if they don't like the rules and the standards that have been created, then you need to get those board members out of there, and that happens through your vote. Same thing in government, right? Another great question. Describe what you perceive is the superintendent's role in the district, right? Well, their role is to execute upon the vision of the board based on visions, goals, and expected outcomes. And again, if the board's done their job, they are expressing the visions and goals and expected outcomes of the community, what the families and the people who live there expect to see in that school board, and the superintendent needs to execute those, right? This is a good question locally, but I have a feeling that this is nationally. Do you have any ideas to address overcrowding in classrooms and lack of small group space? Well, again, I'd have to learn more about overcrowding in our particular school, and I'm only aware of what my own child's circumstances are, and what, and my personal child seems to be at a comfortable level. But my immediate thought, when you think about this for schools across the country, is to utilize outdoor space for small groups, maybe get them out of the classroom. Of course, I'm in Montana, so when the weather is appropriate, right? Maybe potentially create some creative field trips, going to local libraries or college campuses to provide relief. When we look at the influx of growth in some of these cities, because people are moving, we've seen that in this last election cycle. People are moving out of California in masses, and they're landing in Utah, Montana, Idaho, Texas. This is probably a national problem, but there's a lot of creative ways you can solve it short term, and then look at long-term ideas, which kind of goes back to, do we need to grow the school by pulling a bond and really creating some growth there, right? Another question, good one. Could you advocate for a board decision that was passed whether you were originally in favor of it or not? Now, this is interesting that this question comes up, but the point of a board is to take a vote based on everyone's research and input, right? The point of having a vote is to allow the majority to rule. If I couldn't live or work with that ruling, then I should not be on a board, since that's the very foundation of a board, right? And that's why a board is always an odd number, so that you have a majority vote. And if you've got a board filled with, what we call yes people in business, meaning everybody's going to say yes to whatever the board president wants, then you've got a terrible board. But at the same time, if you have board members that won't agree with the majority, and then they get stuck on those votes, then they're probably not adding long-term value. And those are the type of board members that you would want to have replaced. And hopefully your community would see that as well, because eventually your board could become very passive and just be a yes person board, and therefore there's no more value in that board, right? So it's a good question, and it's not just in school boards. It's in business, across the country, around the world. If you've been asked to sit on a board, please bring some value. This next question really should be my first question, because I love the answer the most. And the question is, what is your vision of the education in this community, right? What is the vision of the education in this community? I want my children, our children, the children of the community to be equipped with the tools necessary to be successful as they move on, in my case, on to high school and beyond. I want to add value through extracurricular activities like music, sports, arts, et cetera, whatever we can bring to those children. I want every kid to be equipped and be inspired, and I want every kid to love learning and their time at my particular school, Smith Valley. But I think that every parent should strive for their board